croissant who went off and did good. So thank you so much for being here. We have an amazing writer, Stillions Whitehead, who has just basically spent her entire day with me and some students. We got blessed in a coffee shop. We ate too much red meat. It's been a good day. But I'm actually not going to introduce Tara. In fact, Ariel Fisher is going to come and introduce Tara. Ariel Fisher is a senior creative writing student, an extraordinary writer, has done some amazing things, and I can't wait to see what she does next. So Ariel, you want to come up? Okay, thank you.
Hello, thank you for that introduction, Dr. Peters. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines an icon as a person or thing widely admired, especially for having great influence or significance in a particular sphere. Few people can truly live up to that definition and the pressure behind it, but I believe Tara Stillions Whitehead is one of those few. Born and raised among the hills, poppies, and palm trees of Carlsbad, California, Tara is an alumna of the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts. First getting her start in the film world as a Directors Guild of America assistant director, Tara then went on to assist executive producers in shows like The Big Bang Theory and 2.5 Men. Later, she pursued a graduate degree in fiction creative writing from San Diego State. Upon graduation, Tara and her husband moved to Central Pennsylvania, where she currently resides as an assistant professor of writing and communications at Messiah University. She is also a staff member of the esteemed Young Writers Workshop and the mother of 2 children. Tara's literary and film accomplishments speak triumphantly for themselves. Her essays and stories have appeared in more than 24 publications, including The Rupture, Cream City Review, Fairy Tale Review, Fiction International, Prism, Chicago Review, and so on. She has produced, written, and directed a number of short and feature films. Since 2021, she has published 3 titles: Blood Histories, her debut chapbook concept album, The Year of the Monster, a short story collection, and most recently, They More Than Burned, a fiery experimental memoir. Her books have appeared on SPE's fiction bestseller list, as well as the Wyclife's Top 50 in both 2021 and 2022. Tara is the proud recipient of a Glimmer Train Award for New Writers, and has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize, Best of the Net, and AWP Introjournal Award. Her essay, The Mother Must Die and Other Lies Fairy Tales Told Me, was listed as a notable essay in the Best American Essays 2022. Additionally, Tara's works have earned her a nomination for the 2022 Aspen Awards Award. So, without any further ado, it is my honor and privilege to welcome the icon, Tara Stillions Whitehead.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Ariel. It was really, really lovely. I want to thank Berry College for inviting me here. Y'all have a really, really great sense of hospitality. We did eat a lot of red meat, which I'm okay with. The brisket today was fabulous. Your campus is gorgeous. I have never seen more deer hanging out among the humans in my entire life. Alive. Where I'm from, you would not be, they would be targets. So yeah, I've had a great time. I'm really looking forward to meeting and talking to students after, but I had a wonderful time meeting and talking with students today as well. So thank you to Dr. Peters, especially for schlepping me around, picking me up in Atlanta, driving through Atlanta traffic. I know you're trying to make it look easy, but it's a lot. I'm actually going to start with a poem. I don't consider myself a poet necessarily, but for that reason, I guess I'm going to read a poem. I don't have a copy of Blood Histories on me, which is fairly unprofessional probably, which is my chapbook that was mentioned is out of print. This poem that I'm going to start with is called Circles and Spheres and Other Well-Rounded Objects, and it was published in Pithead Chapel in 2020. Circles and Spheres and Other Well-Rounded Objects. This is how you calculate infinity, how you get different results by doing the same thing over and over, how you remain dizzy long after stops, how you begin living after a lifetime contemplating death. Here is where to point your finger when you want to blame God, how to hold a fired AR-15 accountable, how to settle for less so that you can make room for more. This is the crystal you spoke when you want to become a new person. And this is the sand you snort when you need to find the old one. These are the places to touch when you stop feeling like yourself and are contemplating those bottles of vanilla and mouthwash. This is how to listen when no one is talking, how to start a fire without dryer lint or light bulbs, how to unwrap a wound you didn't know was a wound, how to not die trying. Here are the ingredients for a perfect storm, the hiding places where you can lose yourself. This is how to unlock your front door on days when the world is going to end, how to wear hope inside out like a shirt that isn't yours. This is how you open a child's chest and vacuum the glitter out. This is how you fill a child with the world that they will have to fix. This is how you collect the broken glass when the child's work is done, how you teach broken glass to make a window, how you teach broken glass to make a mirror. This is how you use a window to learn from the past and how you use a mirror to see the future. Here is how to wade through an ocean that isn't yours, how to live in the sunlight without casting shadows, how to interpret your grandmother's tongues. This is how to love the child who comes from blood muscle. This is how to love the child who comes from that space between loneliness and urge. This is how to love the child that is rotten before the harvest and hollowed of seed. How children from broken geometries find their own symmetry outside of circles and spheres and other well-rounded objects. This is how you get the laces right on the first try. How to turn your desire into land and your body into prayer. This is how to stay clean when there's no water, how to pray when there's no one awake. Here's how to read the lines that are neither fine nor oblique, lines without knots or surface tension, lines too heavy, cast too deep. Here is the word you are looking for, the sentence without the metaphor, the lover that you never fucked. Here is how to write indeterminately, how to bury an unfinished story before it becomes a story, and how to forgive yourself for not wanting it to end. So I was telling students earlier today that Blood Histories came out in 2021, but it actually was my second book, because the first book was under contract for almost 3 years, and during that time when I was editing, I pulled things out, and I realized that I had this smaller collection of poems and hybrid pieces and whatnot that had to do with mother-daughter relationships. And so I worked with Galileo Press, and they ended up putting it out before Monster. And I learned a lot from that editing process. They're very different books. It was a concept album. That was something that my editor had come up with. He said, it feels like music to me. It's very lyrical. It involves flash fiction as well. I like to write in the in-between spaces. So I'm going to read one more piece from that. This piece is titled Self-Portrait for Edward Levay. Edward Levay was a French photographer who wrote several books, experimental, one which was called Autoportrait, and it's an entire book of these self-declarative statements of what he is and isn't and has and hasn't had. So this is my response to him. Self-Portrait for Edward Levay. Unpack me. Legend by legend, liver by larynx by lung, inventory me into the immeasurable shape of truth. A girl driving her mother to the mountain for ice. The girl trafficking sugar in her underwear because she knows sweetness has saved a woman from death more than once. The girl whose mother leaves her hungry in empty houses. You write about tongues passing as strawberries. I recall rotten fruit in the texture of seduction. A girl hushed by the lie that violence always makes a sound that burns red across the Milky Way. A girl whose body opens like a prayer at 15, who after years of forced glossolalia tasted the dry mercy of God, the flesh of black walnut embalmed with Ozark dew, a stranger in her father's house. I eat in your deserted restaurants. I drop stones into emptiness to see which ghosts will form in the wake. A girl drowned drunk in the Voltava during snow squall, who climbed Vishra to explain the lightning to the thunder, who wept in Gaelic and surrendered to Angus Ian in the peat below Killarney Fjord. A girl whose father pulled a drowned puppy from the backyard pool on his third wedding day and buried it in the aloe patch. A girl suspicious around bodies of water, who can't metabolize Bakarovka or superstitions, who sprints through unfinished housing developments at night to get high. A girl who hides shame the way mothers conceal the bruise on an apple, its decaying softness tucked hard into the palm. I know your forbidden variations of house. I invented them. I played mother until I knew better, father until I turned into a secret. A nervous girl who loved to run chalk into asphalt and cocaine into equal signs. Symmetry is the solution of powerlessness. I played the girl who kissed a Frenchman in the tungsten twilight of the MGM brand, who woke to hives and found him gone, finished, eaten, murdered. The girl who sang too loud and too much as a small child, who fears low ceilings and anaphylaxis, whose sleepless mother taped tinfoil to the window to simulate an artificial night. Erasing the half moon. You imagined me into a legacy of negatives, a girl whose estranged twin rescues dogs from people for a living and drinks too much when he thinks about their father and the smell of gasoline. A girl whose saddest memory is euthanasia and ketamine and having no body to bring home, no proof of life before the divorce and absentia. A girl who studied Benjamin and Borges and Lispector in English and Lai and Brackage and Varda in Czech, whose rap sheet is dirtier than yours, who fucked men without faces, and broke bone and ice in the shadow of a Bohemian cathedral, a girl for whom a train ticket to Warren was suicide, but also rebirth, an invitation for murder, but also, my friend, rebirth. I do not recognize a tiger's scent, but I have eaten glass and fed cycling. I fear sudden thirst, and I know where to find drink, how to use it against myself to end the world. When you write about the best days being behind you, I picture the fast girl who grew into a slow woman, and I think about her empty bottles and the crocuses beneath the porch, her half-folded list of men kissed, one penciled asterisk for the married, two for the ones who died young, and I see the woman whose favorite time of day is a weather event, the unseasonable hour that scatters jacaranda like love notes across the road. I resurrect, marry the sky, and there are two lightning bolts. The first strikes hot beneath near the full moon, a daughter born reaching for the body and all its secrets, for the shape of her mother, for me, a son with instructions for casting shadow. It's interesting how when you write books or things over time, how you look back and we were talking about this today in class of where you were. It's like these snapshots. So that was a nice place to visit for a moment. So The Year of the Monster came out a year ago yesterday. So yesterday was its book birthday. So now it's a toddler. It's no longer an infant baby. Which when I had both of my kids, it was like I had to like survive. You guys don't. Most of you probably don't. You understand this, but for me, like I had to survive the first year because my kids never slept and they were like constantly hungry. I was working nonstop and I was just like sleep deprived. I'm like, you just get that 1 year. I forced them to eat solid food all the time. They taught me a lot. I never planned on having kids. It was never in my plan. But kind of one of the great things is learning that I can plan my life and being, I don't know, leaning into that, I guess. So, are you guys doing okay? You're right. You're right. Because I know I just kind of panicked a little bit. So I think I'll read this. It's a little less heavy. It's the opening piece in Year of the Monster. It's called Inciting Moment. You guys talk about the inciting moment fiction, let people, what the inciting moment is, right? I think that's a character on their journey. Metaphorical journey, physical journey. So I went to film school in LA, and the mythology of LA making fun of myself, but also just this is what you do to make it in LA. So I think that's enough preamble, but insight moment. Fade in on a Craftsman split into 2 units, 406 square feet each. Tucked into Franklin Hill, the neighborhood at the center of your notion of making it. The Hill is much like everything else in Hollywood. It's high culture tinged with artistic travesty, gratuitousness flanked by poverty, legend, and meshed with tenacious ideation. You sell 10 liters of plasma, your 91 Dodge Colt antique record player, the diamond studs your late grandfather gifted you for your 12th birthday. You default on your student loans and eat rice noodles and sriracha for 3 weeks. It only takes 3 weeks, $90 in application fees, a $50 credit check, a $100 Westside rental subscription, first and last month's rent, and $150 non-refundable parking deposit. $4,290 later, you call yourself a Los Angelina. Bukowski drew a penis in our bathroom. You boast to the first man you sleep with on the memory foam futon. You cannot be more embarrassing in your pride as you reveal the pocket door and trace your finger along the fleshy sword like its victory is your own. You are suddenly a palimpsest of strangeness appropriated from strangeness. You quickly become part of the elite group of people who identify by intersections and freeway exits. DeLong and Hyperion for East of La Brea locals, 101 in Vermont for your contact south of Wilshire, 134 in Los Feliz for your free women's clinic in Reseda. There's not much space to self-reflect in the shotgun kitchen, and you battle the nagging feeling that there will never be a place that you can call home anymore. At night, you admire the city skyline to the south and imagine what it looked like in 1937 when the house was built. You've seen Chinatown. You know these hills were sprawling headstones above the city, draped in desert darkness. You would have been able to trace Cassiopeia in the northern sky. You would have slipped into bed beneath the Paramore's haunted glow. The tenants upstairs are not married and keep their folding chairs stationed on the tarmac that extends over the garage below the house, which is an extension of your very unuseful front lawn. You hear them fight and make up through the gossamer thin floors more than a dozen times before the second rent check is due. By the 3rd month, you hear nothing, hot water pipes and deadbolts on occasion. You sleep with the man not long after during the 2007 writer's strike. The studios are paralyzed and the city is restless. It is the first time you see an uncircumcised penis. You're drunk enough to recite a few too many poems from Love's a Dog from Hell, and between orgasms he says he would not have kept you for a Bukowski fan and attempts to guess your Myers-Briggs type and rising sun. You're tempted to show him the pocket door, but then he discloses that he's an insurance broker who played lacrosse on a sports scholarship at Duke until he injured himself in rush week. This intensely ruins your fantasy, and you wish you never had a drink in your long young life. 3 weeks later, he's climbing through a basement window. 2 days into a cocaine bender and atomized by loneliness and desire, he perches at the edge of your bed and recites Billy Collins poems until you have to leave for work. No offense to people like Billy Collins. The strike is over, you tell him there's a lot of catching up to do. In the styrofoam darkness of stage rehearsals, you realize you allowed his phone calls and text messages to go unanswered a little too long. You should have said something after he threatened to throw himself off the tarmac, after he misspelled your name for the 10th time. Walking out of your first full week back at the storyboards, you have your first real industry epiphany, and the thought of someone loving you becomes more claustrophobic than the 406 square feet that you still cannot call home. Checking my time. Yeah, LA's a fun place. You can go there. Y'all are young, like, go when you're young, before you have families. Yeah. I'm trying to read the pieces. When I go to readings, I lose, and it's just me, it's nobody. I lose focus after like a certain amount of time. So those are mostly flash fiction pieces, so 1,000 words or less. But Monster has a variety of different lengths of stories. I actually think I'm going to read something from Bird. I'm going to read. Oh, you guys like laughing. I kind of felt good about it laughing. Maybe I should read something funny. Okay, this one's kind of funny. Sort of funny. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I should have them marked. You think like I was trying to figure out what I wanted to start with, and I was sort of feeling the crowd. Check this level. Okay. So, They More Than Burn is an experimental memoir. It's listed, tagged with fiction too. It's, I would say, about 60% script format and 40% prose. And I use the script as the dominant narrative and bring in what I consider archival footage / materials that the documentarian in the main narrative is using to create the documentary that she's trying to resell, repitch. So this is one of the prose pieces. It's hard to read the script pieces without assistance. So this piece is called Check Your Risk Level. Shoshona got her period the day after the Fallbrook fire erupted east of Highway 15 and incinerated hundreds of acres of pot and palm tree farms. Her boyfriend blamed blue balls. Her nana blamed MTV, and us, we knew better than to point fingers. We knew there were other ways to start fires. I'm so sick of this shithole, Kelsey told me over carne asada burrito in the hotel beach access. It was Good Friday. The air was still cottony with weed smoke and palm ash. We should have been in AP chemistry, but Kelsey's parents were at a Harley show in Reno. So we got stoned in Kelsey's bedroom and spent the morning making out. The beach access was our shared version of limbo. We would sit 50 feet up from the sand, claim the cement landing between 3 stories of multi-million-dollar luxury real estate as ours, and scowl at the narrow frame of sea below. I wonder what it was like, I said, to not be afraid of water. Kelsey dug a piece of charred meat out of her teeth and flipped it towards the waves. After graduation, she said, I'm moving to New York. What's in New York? Cement, steel, fire departments. Kelsey winked at me through a triumph of red curls and real lesbians. We both knew everything burned. We'd come of age in endless smoke, we'd survived on desert shorelines and learned to extinguish our bodies in the Pacific. The sea, they said, would asphyxiate what was programmed to combust. So when our brothers and boyfriends and parents grew fearful, they sent us west, sent us to water, demanded we submerge, stay under until the North Pacific Gyre had made us sufficiently numb. They called it curing girls for fire season, but we knew that was bullshit. They were trying to do so much more than douse our phantom fires before they started. They were trying to extinguish the light of the source to prevent it from shining at all. Some of us took matters into our own hands. We knew the droughts would keep coming, that we would be blamed for the fires, that there was a reason we'd be given nothing to protect ourselves. Emily survived the Elfin Forest fire by creating a controlled burn beside her grandma's jacuzzi. She used Asa's love letters and the bottle of pop-off her brother Joe left under the bed when he deployed. They used to send us away from May to August, to church camp, to grandparents' houses in the sticks. That's all changed now that the world is dying and fire season never ends. Summer is longer, and not in the ways that we wanted it to be. There are millions of dumb ways that adults try to cure girls for fire season. And for whatever reason, most started with a home remodel or re-landscaping. So Eileen's dad was the first to install tile floors and buy flame-resistant sheets, but Nikki's mom was the first to talk to us about the real risk of nights, all their unspent heat and desire, the time of greatest flammability. 14 That's when I started using metal cases for my cigarettes, she said, taking a long drag of her Capri. She was trying to caution us, to comfort us with her experience, but I couldn't take my eyes off of her fresh acrylics and the way they reflected the light of the sun like tiny mirrors. The summer before I started high school, I got breasts and 3 smoking tickets from the same beach club on bike. Dad raised the ice plant honeysuckle and installed a fence-to-fence pool and granite patio. It was like the fucking Parthenon. I got this system, Dad said, gesturing towards his $50,000 investment. If a teenage boy's penis so much as skims the top of the pool, the water will turn blood red. And I'm like, no. Our parents didn't understand. They thought we avoided the pools because we were focused on our cans. It didn't matter that California was in a drought and had been for 50 years. For my parents, the cost of curing was not even a question. Lydia pierced her belly button the summer we lost our virginity. She fell asleep on the beach while listening to Patti Smith and woke up with a constellation of glass in her stomach. The barbell looked like a fresh railroad tie. And to be fair, the Santa Anas had been blowing all week, so it was only a matter of time before one of us got too hot for too long and melted a thing or two. Lydia, who've you been dicking around with? Anita whispered. We were huddled in the corner of an air-conditioned waiting room full of construction workers, and a boy could shove the Lego up his nose. No one, Lydia wept, not since Brian. Then, do you think it'll scar? Those Yellow House boys are sketchy, I said, uneasy. I still hadn't told her about the sleeping bag and the underground and how I'd hooked up with Brian 2 weeks before she'd hooked up with him at that Motel 6 party. It didn't bother me the way I knew it would bother her. I liked Brian, but I liked a lot of people. Girls, boys, people. And anyway, fucking Brian hadn't been about fucking Brian. It had been about seeing the forest for the trees, and it felt good everywhere. But still, I wondered, will I be next? Would I have to atone for such pleasure? Would I wake up to see my mother's jacaranda burn to the ground? Would I succumb to shame and shrapnel like Lydia or Aubrey or Danny or Natasha? Because you see, any girl can start a grass fire with her bare knees. They told us that from an early age. Keep your skirts long and your shoulders bloused, and before you leave for school, check your risk level. Raise your arms above your head and squat down on your haunches. Is your ass showing? Can you see your hip flexors? Think about where you fall on the danger scale. If it's a red flag warning kind of day, call the school and tell them to send your work home. If it's prom week, know where your portable extinguisher is. I kept an E-Jet aerosol in the water bottle pocket of my JanSport that my mom bought me from Duluth or Bar Tact when they had sales, usually around Easter Memorial Day. And to be honest, I'd never seen a girl start a fire. But I felt the blistering heat of a lie. We all had. The last summer they sent me away to my aunt's house in Humboldt, everything changed. While my aunt and uncle were off playing disc golf with friends from their local mycological society, I smoked an unfinished joint I found in one of the ashtrays and stumbled across a slim book, Against Curing Girls for Fire Season, tucked between 2 vegan cookbooks in the pantry. It didn't have an ISBN number or publisher or copyright year, but the paper felt like silk between my fingers. I snuck it home when my college application's peachy, and when I wasn't wearing the sheen down on its glossy pages, I hid it in the Thriller vinyl tacked to my bedroom wall. Sometime in November, I think it was right after the Valley Fire wiped out the last of Escondido's vineyards, Kelsey accepted a full ride to NYU for their music industry program. I was still waiting to hear back from a handful of schools all west of Mississippi. What if it's the same there? I asked her. I heard there are sharks in the East River. Pink dolphins too, Kelsey smiled, leaning away from me into the beach access room, and you really can't get any gayer than that. I read the book to Anita and Kelsey in the Taco Bell parking lot while we waited for AJ to pick us up and take us to Yellow House. All this talk of catastrophe and fear-mongering, this was my favorite part, is willful baptism by fire. We cannot let fear silence us like smoke. Fear itself is the accelerant. Kelsey lit a cigarette and listened with the intensity of a barracuda. We must stop them from proselytizing our bodies. We must teach each other how to recover from these lies. We must show each other how to rise from the ashes of our oppressors and live anew. The words ricocheted off of the parking lot pylons into the afternoon traffic. Anita passed me her horchata and stood up. Her eyes glistened. She was awake. Here, I placed the pamphlet in her outstretched hand. What do you think? I think, she started, watching AJ's white sea breeze pull into the parking lot, that things aren't going to be the same anymore. They can't. They can't be. Spencer opened the passenger door and gestured at his crotch. There's room on my lap for a hottie. You wish, Spoons, Anita said, eyes glued to a page I marked in red. AJ, motionless behind the wheel, fist bumped me through the driver's side window as I sardined myself onto the split leather back seat. Anita rode bitch, her face pushed deep into the boat's loosening binding. I could feel my heart racing to catch up with the excitement of this secret that I discovered and released into the world. I had no idea what we would do with it. All I knew was that everything had changed and I didn't want it to go back to the way it was. Halfway to Yellow House, Kelsey unbuckled her seatbelt. She tossed her half-smoked cigarette out the window. Come here, she whispered, reaching, swimming across the fishnet landscape with Anita's lap, until she arrived at the horizon of my body, until she crested me like a rising sun, and everything was touch and light, and so hard, so hot, I couldn't tell who was melting who. I didn't care. All I knew was that we'd never let them force us underwater again. You guys okay?
Yes.
You guys holding back your head good? Okay. It's a lot to sit in one spot for a period of time. It's so fun because I'm not reading like any of the film stuff, which is interesting. Okay, I'm gonna read, it's a flash piece. I think because it's, September is National Recovery Month, and I'm in recovery. I just celebrated 6 years sobriety 2 days ago. And my publisher calls this book, They More Than Burned, my recovery book. So it does deal with the process of getting sober. And I think it's important to have stories about not just addiction, but recovery. I think there's a lot of stories about addiction, and not as many about sobriety and recovery. So I kind of aim for that in my writing. I come from a family of addicts and alcoholics. It took me a while to hit my bottom. And this is a story about that. This is an essay that was published in the Police Review. And it's called When the Alcoholic Falls from the Sky. When the alcoholic falls from the sky, there is no equation for calculating where she will land because in every story but this one, she never does. When the time comes to surrender, it won't feel like rock bottom because in the end, it's not about the rock or the bottom. Death has no altitude. Instead, it will feel like another long drive home. It will feel like a balloon that can hold more air, like if you could just turn yourself inside out, there you will finally be. I'm 2 months sober when the first snow falls. I meet strangers in night churches and witness testimonies about lifted obsession. I eat the candy and I cry into the coffee. I don't tell anyone that I'm afraid. Obsession's all I have. Stay in the middle of the herd, Steve M. says one night, pulling a wallet from his back pocket. He's wearing a Cooper cattleman hat and aviators and doesn't crowd me the way that the other men in these rooms have. From a bundle of cards secured with a rubber band, he offers me a hand-drawn picture of a buffalo near a mesa. Some are grazing, some are frolicking. Do buffalo frolic? And some are, by all obvious artistic intentions, lost. As I shove a pouch of M&Ms into my mouth, Steve hands me a figure eight and points to the bottom of the drawing, where a solitary brown splotch wanders near an uncertain space labeled cliff. Yeah, you find yourself here, you call someone who can help you get back to the herd, and if no one answers, you put that under your tongue. the little buffalo. Yeah, you put that in your tongue so you can't talk yourself into anything stupid. I fell 18,000 feet and still needed more. Cocaine, codeine, Klonopin, cooking sherry, Listerine, Coricidin. Only another alcoholic can understand. If I'd known the last drink was my last, I never would have stopped. When a helicopter falls from the sky in the night 3 streets away from our Cape Cod, no one is there to see it except God. Nothing is there to stop it except the jungle gym and a sugar maple and some half-bloom matchsticks of goldenrod. I'm in a bed that isn't mine, dreaming I'm on a round flight to Alaska, the empty fuselage hydraulic over Saskatchewan. I'm drunk and I'm standing the flight attendant in his tiny bottles of Crown Royal. Like all drunk dreams, I'm using the intent to fuck someone. I tell the attendant that if we're gonna die, I need him to come inside of me first. Drinking is not unlike real drinking. In both obsession and excess unite, blaze, flash over. The cabin lights flicker, the flight attendant abandons his cart and takes me across the row of empty seats. He tells me the turbulence scares him, so I pull him all the way inside of me like a secret and explain, we'll be transcending the darkness soon. We are flying so fast, we are silencing the sound before it can catch us. The orgasm wakes me up and the bed sheets are soaked like they used to be. I get up before the kids and run 7 miles through the fog, unsure if I'm still sober. At mile 2, I find the propeller in a ditch where I used to dump my bottles in neatly tied grocery bags. And at mile 3, I find the smaller than expected exoskeleton emptied of its passengers. At mile 5, I've convinced myself that I'm still drunk and the attendant is still inside of me, and that shame is a prophecy. Google things falling from the sky, and you can frighten your obsession into distraction. Boiled bats, venison, spiders, suitcases, starfish, baby shoes, blood oranges, needles, and tree frogs. I'm not so much afraid to fly as I am to fall. Physics promises us that everything, even clouds, come back to Earth. All bodies have a terminal velocity. Nothing escapes physics except God and black holes and maybe a little bit of the devil. When a 2014 Jetta falls from the sky, downing 2 telephone poles and leveling several cement mailboxes, I'm asleep in a bed that isn't mine, dreamless. I'm expecting lightning when I descend the stairs and emerge barefoot into the asphalt darkness. At first, a capsized vehicle in a constellation of picket fencing and windshield glass looks like every car that I've ever owned. But as I move closer, I see I'm not the one at fault. Our neighbor is picking up pieces of mailbox from 4 houses down. I approach a heavy-set man in a monocolored shirt bending over the driver's side window. With the streetlights out, it's so dark I can't see who's inside. Are they okay? I whisper, thinking that he is real, thinking I'm not dreaming. The man looks at me confused, as if I'm a cloud to be passed through. And though I have never seen him before, I know who he is. But there's no one inside that car. He's still falling. The electricity is out when I get home. Everyone is still asleep. I salivate and maybe think, I am too, I don't know. By the light of my phone, I dig through the shit in my steel case. Candy wrappers, mini DV tapes, safety pins, shot glasses, phone chargers, photos, air fresheners, until I find that tiny buffalo that Steve gave me. I place it under my tongue. It tastes like royal pine and sheet metal. The latex, hard but clinical. I say fall, but it comes out fool. I say shit, and it comes out sit. Fool, sit. Because I know what happens when I don't follow directions. I drop to the floor. I wrangle that tiny buffalo with my tongue. I count and recount its stubborn legs as I turn my body into a human airstrip. I wait for the ceiling to crack open, for grace to make its emergency landing. That's right, there are questions and answers. Sorry about that.
Hello. Hey, thank you so much, Sarah. That was freaking amazing. And just so everyone knows, her books, The Year of the Monster, and that one.
Dalen Burn and
Dalen Burn. Yeah, they are both on sale in the back, and Tara said she would sign books after the Q&A, so that's awesome. So I will come around if you have questions. Just please raise your hand.
Just repeating it here in reverse. Yeah, thanks.
So you talked a little bit about when your first book was published, but I know that all writers, you don't publish the first book you write. And so I was very curious about your first experience writing a full body of work and how that was for you and what the topic was and how you took that experience to then move on and write the book you finally published.
Yeah, so I thought I was not one of those writers because I was super special. I was like, I am totally not going to write a book that I don't publish because that's a waste of time and energy. And in this culture, we don't waste things. That's unproductive, right? Like if you make something that's a product that you can sell, you sell it, even if you don't believe in it. So that's a great question. I started writing a novel in graduate school, and I finished the novel eventually, 4 years I think after my MFA, maybe a few less than that, a few fewer than that, and I sent it out, and I had some agent interest in it. I talked about this a little bit in the class the other day. I'm really open about my addiction and recovery story, and like one of the parts of that story is that I didn't know how to surrender to a lot of things. So for me, like surrendering to the fact that like this book that I put like 8 years of my life in, and that was supposed to be my redemption story after all the things I'd gone through in Hollywood and things that had happened to me. Like I couldn't humble myself to the fact that like I wrote a book that maybe not even wasn't good because of parts of it, but it wasn't the book. So I was writing short, like I love short story writing, fragmentary writing. I write in the liminal spaces. I love lyricism, and I like to be political in my writing. I didn't read a whole lot of political writing this evening. But so I was publishing short stories and essays along the way, and I actually ended up distilling my novel down to a 5,000 word story called The Earth Monster. So my novel became the title story of this book. And that took me like, I think I published that in Prism International in 2019. So probably, it took me like 8 years, to be like, maybe this is a short story, but it's not. Parts, the novel has multiple plots, right? So I did that. That happened after I got sober. I wasn't able to finish a lot of things, so like the fact that I finished my novel before I got sober, I was like that's pretty amazing. But just in general, I wasn't able to finish a lot of things. So I think that was a point. My creativity, I used to think like I had to drink to be creative. I was like, I don't know, I was talking to Dr. Peters about Leslie Jameson's book, The Recovering. She's an essayist, and it's probably one of my favorite books ever. She talks about the legacy of writers and drinking, and she went to Iowa, and she wrote a really great book. She actually says in the beginning she organized the book like an AA meeting. She wanted it to be like that. And a lot of what happened when I was like, I'm either going to die or kill myself with this disease that I have, was that surrender, and then I was able to start to surrender a lot of other things. So that meant also looking at this thing that I spent so many years on, and that I had like ostensibly failed at doing, and saying like, okay, well, what am I going to do with it now? So I harvested it for parts, which is what I do as a writer a lot of the time. I write something and I harvest it. I'm like, yeah, this isn't getting published, maybe I need to use the metaphor, or I could use something else. So yeah, and then I had a collection I sent out, and then it was accepted and went through its whole editorial process. That novel's still sitting on my computer. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but who knows, I might go back to it, maybe see the B plot, do something with it, I don't know. But yeah, I know a lot of writers who the first thing that they complete, like a book-length thing, they don't publish. used to before I found my voice. Which is, like, it's not a static thing, it's, your voice is evolving through your life experience, you know. Your literal voice evolves, your writing voice evolves. For me, the inner critic is not so much about style like it used to be, where it's like, this sentence is terrible. It's more of a frustration that comes out when I'm not articulating the concept, the theme, or the claim that I'm getting at. So the critic is dormant right now, so I'm not writing a lot right now, so I'm not one of the last time the critic was there. I think everyone gets sick of reading their stuff after a while. My critic's the worst when the book's in production, when one of these, because it was like 2021 my chapbook, and then 2022 my book, and then 6 months later my second book. So it was just sort of like, I'm looking at these things and until I'm like nauseated, like the amount of editing. So that critic is more of, it's like a pressure of active, I don't know, critic. But I think during the writing process, the critic is usually there for me I should say, not many people, when I'm doing one of two things. I need to be brave and I'm not being brave. And I'm trying to write around the thing as opposed to about the thing. Or I'm trying to do something with a form that the content is not dictating. So if what I'm writing about, like for instance, why use script format? Because it's fun. Well, I'm critiquing the film industry that I worked in, this incredibly misogynistic, that hurt me physically and emotionally. And so how am I going to write that from a distance while also telling the story? That's always kind of like a hybrid memoir. And you have to write script in, well, you don't have to write script in third person objective present tense, but because Oppenheimer, we were talking about that, is all first person script, which is baffling. But choosing that because the content dictates it. I'm going to critique the industry and how it really defaces any amount of authenticity through the commodification of art. Like, I'm going to use the thing itself to do that. Right? So I think the critic is there when it's always there, but it's loudest when you're doing something that, formally speaking, might not be the right thing, or if you're, for me, I should say, my approach is I'm being, I don't know. That probably answers your question, girl. I'm sorry. I was at a Matthew Desmond. I don't know if you guys read Matthew Desmond's Addicted. He also just published a book, Poverty in America, and I went to his book launch, and he was talking about being brave at writing, and basically if you're not, especially in what he does, if you're not brave in your writing, you're doing yourself a disservice. So that helps me.
So you said one of the books that you were reading from tonight was very much the mother-daughter relationship and that kind of thing. And I honestly do not know how old your children are, but I was wondering is that book or most of your material being the daughter in that situation, or does a lot of your material come from being the mother of the children in this situation?
So that's a great question, because growing up as the daughter of alcoholic addicts, I had a reverse role a lot, where I was the mother to my parents, both my parents. And so I write about it in a lot of my work about losing my mom. My mom's alive, but I lost my mom for a good period of time to institution. She was in jail, she was homeless, she was a lot of things. And so for me, I think a lot of that writing is finding the role. And that collection has an arc where at the very end, it really is a lot about becoming the mother I want to be. So yeah, I have an essay that's not in any of these collections called The Mother Must Die and Other Lies Fairy Tales Told Me, and it's a graded essay about Anne Sexton's transformations and Kurt Vonnegut and writer mothers, and then depictions of mothers in fairy tales, and how often in fairy tales we see mothers erasing themselves or being erased and being replaced by their daughters. And so I think a lot of what I'm writing is that we can break that generational trauma in a way, that we don't have to disappear. And that's kind of like, that was my realization when I got sober, just like, I don't have to kill myself in front of my children, you know, like I don't have to hurt them. So yeah, I think in those, like, the role is a fluid one, and it is like literally seeking what my role is in that generation.
Okay. Okay. So I wanted to ask, what's like the first thing you do when you're about to start writing? The exact first thing.
I gather snacks. And I make coffee. Because I write at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So if I plan to write later in the day, it's not gonna happen. Because I have to keep people alive, I've got to teach, I've got to pay bills, I've got to clean the house, I've got to, like, I'm on a bowling league now. And it's really hard. I'm doing it for my husband. But when I actually start the writing, I start like, if we're talking about like generative, like I'm not in something, I still have those rituals and habits. But I often start one of two ways. I start with an interior monologue, like I'm having a conversation with myself on the page, and I voice all of the voices that are speaking. Or if I'm doing some kind of formal experimentation, I forge a prompt out of that. Like I was talking earlier today about like what I call like an inverted story, like all the things that a story isn't, or all the things that aren't happening versus all the things that are happening, or all the things that the characters do smell or see. I like to also try to operate from a sound perspective first too, because I think, well, I love sound and sound design. I've worked in sound design, but I like, and I'm not talking sound like the language that comes too, but within the diegesis, the world of the characters, what is the sound that's there, and that can become part of the setting. So I think, but I come to that knowing what my entry point is into writing, and after looking at it after a while, of like, okay, I did some writing, where did I start? And do I have an easy time when I'm starting here, or do I struggle until I get to another place? What if I try starting in a different place? So I do a lot of what ifs too. Like if I'm trying to world build, I'll just be like, I'm gonna build a world right now. And I'll just be like, what if, you know, what if it's flooding all the time? It is. This is some of the what ifs are changing, but yeah. Hi, Michael.
My little question. So this one is something we're very traditional. All of you visiting writers for quite a while have gotten this one. So if you would be so kind to share your thoughts, feelings, and opinions on Beyonce, that would be appreciated.
Beyonce's fabulous. I really don't think I can add much to that. Like, she's the queen. Yeah. Case closed. So what are my thoughts?
Kara, thank you so much